C'est le radio de l'armée, ça?
The mega singer-songwriter who put Quebec on the map, a foray into the free-for-all radio scene of 1980s France, and a dark love triangle. That's all coming up in today's film show. To take us through those features, I'm joined by film critic Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Olivia.
Now, we're starting with a Franco-Canadian film that topped the box office here in France last week. It centres on the life of Céline Dion, while also not being about Céline Dion explicitly. The film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. It's called Aline. Tell us more.
Well, this is a romantic comedy semi-biopic about a Céline Dion stand-in called Aline Dieu. It follows the real events of Dion's life fairly closely, but since Aline has 13 siblings and she's the youngest, for me it's sort of in the realm of science fiction. I have one sister. And if she has remained down to earth despite her success and fame, it probably has something to do with sleeping 8 in a room and sharing the bathroom with 15 other people. Barbra Streisand, whose voice also brought her superstardom despite an ultra-modest background, is Aline's role model. I love stories about talented musicians who parlay their talent into the stratosphere and don't die at age 27. The concept is almost psychedelic here in that the matter-in-fact bending of time and space, because Valérie Lemercier plays Aline from young girlhood until nearly the present. Now, this shouldn't work, but it does, in my opinion, beautifully, with humor and not a speck of condescension.
Okay, well, here is the talented Valérie Lemercier explaining how special effects enabled her to play Aline from childhood into her adult years.
They didn't just put my head onto a child. I acted with my whole body and then they reduced me. Then, for example, when I'm at school at a big desk, it's so big that I look small and I have a large pencil case and pen. It's a mix of that technique, making the things around me larger, and other complicated effects. The special effects team worked for more than 6 months on this film.
On a un diamant brut. J'ai presque manqué de pleurer. Elle va mettre tout le monde à terre.
Ah, voici maintenant un moment que nous attendons tous avec impatience. C'est la révélation au Québec depuis un an.
Voici Aline Dieu.
J'ai des grands rêves pour elle, puis je le sais qu'elle va les atteindre. Faut qu'elle voie autre chose, qu'elle sorte de vos jupons.
With
Catch! Without. Il faut pas se le cacher. Question d'audition, il y a quand même un petit trafic à effectuer. Je m'invente une reine pour que tu me retiennes. Je me ferai nouvelle pour que le feu reprenne.
So some people found it quite strange that a 57-year-old woman is playing a child, a teenager, and then a young woman, a very young woman. But it looked all right to you.
Oh, not only is the effects work seamless, but it carries an important subtext, namely that Aline didn't grow up the way other kids did, literally. The screenplay is funny and empathetic and ultimately quite touching. Céline Dion and her agent/true love enjoyed a real romantic and professional partnership, which really comes across here. Lemercier has said that she was moved to tell the story of a nice woman who loses the love of her life. So many biopics of entertainers include breakdowns or drugs or alcohol or rotten love lives. Aline, in contrast, enjoys the unconditional love and support of her ridiculously large family, the benevolent guidance of her manager who truly cares for her as a person, as well as a rare and talented commodity intent on becoming the most famous singer in the world. She has no uncontrollable vices, and even though it takes a long time, she manages to give birth to the children she so ardently desires. Valérie Lemercier is a very versatile French talent, almost unknown, alas, beyond France. This is her 6th film as a director. She's an accomplished stand-up comedian, in addition to having hosted the Césars and won 2 such trophies. So everyone in France remembers, for example, her trademark utterances in the runaway 1993 time travel comedy Les Visiteurs.
She certainly is a familiar face here in France. Well, next to a coming-of-age story set in the 1980s here in France. This is when the French government opened up the radio airwaves to anyone. There was an explosion of creativity creativity. And the film's called Magnetic Beats. It's made by somebody born around that time.
Yes, the director was born in 1980. This is his first film, and it starts with the election of François Mitterrand in 1981. We meet the young friends who hang out at the bar in their provincial small town, and they believe the Mitterrand government will change their lives. Well, Mitterrand changed my life. I wouldn't be in France or on France 24 were it not for François Mitterrand. He declared an amnesty for illegal aliens. I was one of those, it turns out, although as a middle-class American, I probably was in no danger of ever being deported. And he opened up the radio airwaves to basically anybody who wanted to buy a transmitter and start a radio station, the so-called radio libre or free radios. I worked for one for 3 years and got my residence permit that way. In the film, our incredibly appealing protagonist, Philippe, worships his older brother and does pirate radio shows with him. When Philippe fails in getting out of his obligatory 2-year stint in the army, those skills blossom.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Magnetic Beats.
C'est la radio de l'armée, ça?
Quand tu rentres en France, tu viens me voir à Paris. C'est pas la politique qui va changer le monde. C'est l'art, c'est la musique.
T'es à Berlin, tu fais de la radio, t'es exactement là où tu dois être. Complique pas tout.
It was indeed another time. 40 years ago, as you say, you were there. What made it so exciting?
Oh, well, having graduated with a degree in radio, TV, film from a fancy American university, where we were mostly taught how to get the advertiser's spot on the air at precisely the slot he had paid for, and also to make absolutely sure that no dirty word ever slipped out onto the air, the freedom was extraordinary. You could essentially say or play anything with no censorship. It was intoxicating. It was also edging toward the end of analog sound production. We spun platters, lugged reel-to-reel tape recorders around to do interviews, and physically edited the tape with a razor blade. The FM band went from closely controlled government-sponsored stations to so many amateur broadcasters trying to crowd onto the bandwidth that, no joke, I could walk across my garret and just my torso or my arm would change the frequencies 3 or even 4 times, interrupt the signal without touching any dials. It was glorious creative chaos.
Oh, and it's all digital now. Now, going back to the film, it has 5 screenwriters, I believe. That's a bit unusual.
In this case, too many cooks do not spoil the broth. The recreation of the period, spot on, and there are lots of engaging set pieces wrapped up in a melancholy love story. The sequence where Philippe tries to prove that he's unfit to serve in the military is a gem, and the film captures the very specific mood of the French and British military presence in West Berlin before the wall came down, and what the French call an enchanted parentheses before market forces stepped in and radio regulations returned.
Indeed. Now, next to another film from France, from actress and director Nicole Garcia, Amant, or Lovers, is out in France this week. It's a romantic thriller. What's the pitch?
Well, Nicole Garcia has directed 9 films, including one minor masterwork, 1998's Place Vendôme, starring Catherine Deneuve. Nobody would call this a masterpiece, but I enjoyed it a lot. The structure is classic. The acting is very, very good. It's about the power of love, how the haves have way more than the have-nots, and how earning one's living dishonestly can be very pleasant unless something goes wrong. Lisa and Simon are childhood sweethearts. She's a student. He's a drug dealer. Their lives will be presented to us in 3 distinct chapters, each set in an exotic location, beautifully filmed.
Okay, well, here are those multiple lovers in Lovers.
Alors, t'es heureuse?
Il m'a fait une vie. Il m'a donné des choses que j'avais pas.
Je pouvais pas t'emmener, Lisa.
On s'est retrouvés.
On a des invités.
Tu verras ma vie.
Dites-moi, jeune homme, bravo, c'est fameux. Je dois aller demain matin à Zurich. Un aller-retour dans la journée. Si vous pouviez... Enfin, si vous êtes libre.
Nicole Garcia came to France from her native Algeria when she was 14 years old, and she has been acting with some of France's best directors for over 45 years. The French Cinémathèque is honoring her as an actor and director and screenwriter through November 26th.
And staying with the Cinémathèque Française and wrapping up this celebration of French filmmaking, there's a retrospective underway right now of the late Alain Resnais. That goes on until November 29th.
Alain Resnais is one of my heroes. He was a towering filmmaking talent who went on directing until the year he died, 2014, at age 91. He got his start as a film editor and made a series of superb short films, the most famous of which is almost certainly 1956's Night and Fog, made to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi concentration camps. American students of my generation all saw it in high school and never forgot it because it remains poetic and horrifying to this day. In 1959, he made his feature debut with Hiroshima Mon Amour, an enduring masterpiece written for the screen by Marguerite Duras.
What a debut.
He was a master of serious topics such as how memory works, but he also loved comic books and pop culture and surrealism. His two-part Smoking, No Smoking in 1993 is a tour de force French adaptation of Alan Ayckbourn's stage work, Intimate Exchanges. In 1997, he made the absolutely delightful On connaît la chanson, same old song, in which a cast of morose, conflicted characters end up lip-syncing 36 popular French tunes at entertaining junctures. It won 7 Césars, but even if Resnais had never won a trophy in his life, he would still qualify as an enduring national treasure.
Indeed, a giant of French cinema. Thank you very much for that wrap-up this week, Lisa. We'll leave you with a visual medley of the 6-decade career of Alain Resnais. Remember, you can get more movie news on our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.